Welcome to the Making the Madness NBA mock draft. Today, 30 players will be selected, 14 in this part. Jonathon and I will be doing alternating picks. I will have even numbers, he will have odd numbers. And with that being said, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now on the clock.
With the first pick in the Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves select Anthony Edwards. This really good pick, I think, for the Timberwolves. Obviously, not the number one pick you would have in years past with DeAndre Ayton or Zion Williamson, but certainly Edwards is a good piece. I think he does really well playing alongside D'Angelo Russell, Karl Anthony Towns, Jarrett Culver. I think that's going to be a kind of core four that's going to be able to carry the Wolves in the future. Not a great season this past year, but the future's looking bright for the Wolves, especially with Anthony Edwards in the lineup.
Yeah, this is a home run pick for the Timberwolves. I mean, he just fits that team perfectly. I think he's a very talented player, but just last season, he had that game against Michigan State in the Maui Invitational where he went off, had 40, but he really struggled at times to stay consistent, only shooting 29% from deep, and he shot a ton of them. I think he has very high upside in the NBA for defense, but he did take some possessions off this year defensively. That team just wasn't all that good, though. The only other two good players on the team are Rayshawn Hammonds and Xavier Wheeler. Those were the only two other really talented players on the team. So Anthony Edwards was kind of just trying to do too much. I think he has, maybe not MVP potential, but 5-6 time All-Star potential alongside Jarrett Culver, Karl Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, Josh Okogie. I mean, this is a very good pick, and the Timberwolves, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree on that part. He said in particular, I had a lot of bad games. Let's hope he got all the bad games out of his system, at least if you're the Timberwolves drafting him. But I like the pick. I think he fits well next to D'Angelo Russell. We'll see if he can kind of develop defensively. He has all the skills to be like a lockdown defender. It'll be about, I guess, translating it. He can shoot it at a high level. I think just last year, the issue was he was shooting the ball way too much. I think going into next season, if he can kind of take a step back, decide, hey, I'm not going to try to force everything. I'm not trying to, go out there and win the game single-handedly. I think if he lets the game come to him, he's certainly, I think, going to do really well at the next level.
Absolutely. So now, with the second pick, the Golden State Warriors are now on the clock. And with the second pick, the Golden State Warriors select James Wiseman, center from Memphis. With this one, James Wiseman is a guy who could drop just because in today's positionless NBA, they like to have guys who can play multiple positions, but I feel like many NBA scouts think he's strictly a center. But although I think he could play the 4 alongside, a stationary 5 who doesn't move well, James Wiseman can run the floor great. When he played his 3 games at Memphis this season, obviously 2 were against South Carolina State and UIC, so not top-notch opponents, but he did play a game against Oregon. It was a very good team. He was very good. He shot 72% from the field. He was obviously, the talent's so evident, but it's just staying consistent, and I'm sure there's question marks about his abrupt departure from the team, quitting the team in a sense, which he did, but I wouldn't call those character issues. I just think it was an immature decision maybe, if anything, but if that's what he thought was best for him, then you can't blame him really. I just think what it comes down to is he seems like a really good kid from all accounts. It's just he didn't feel comfortable coming back. I wish he would have. He could have been a National Player of the Year candidate, but he'll be a really good player for the Warriors alongside Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. Andrew Wiggins is okay, I guess. Jordan Poole has really high potential as a shooter. Eric Pascal, he's going to be very good. And this is just a no-brainer for the Warriors, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree on that part. With the Warriors, obviously, you get a player just with this much talent at the center position. Wiseman doesn't even have to go in there day one and show off. Like, I think he has the skills to be kind of a lesser version of DeAndre Ayton. He's a really good defender already. He can block shots. He can rebound. He can score easily inside. And you throw him next to maybe one of the best all-time like glue guys in Draymond Green, who will play the four, can kind of get him some open looks. Then Steph Curry, Klay Thompson on the wing. That's an elite group of players, and one that can get the Warriors back in contention for an NBA championship. Which, after missing the playoffs this year, they'll of course be right back in the mix next season. I think Wiseman's kind of that perfect mix for the team. Obviously, they have good wing depth. They have good play at the guard spot, and we know the Warriors can always go Draymond Green at the 5, but just having the ability over an 82 game regular season to have an actual 5-man who's actually really good at basketball, I think that's going to be huge, where they don't have to kind of bring out all their cards in the regular season. They can kind of not force Draymond Green to play the 5 as much, and I think that would be beneficial for the Warriors going forward.
Yeah, definitely. They won NBA championships with Andrew Bogut starting at the 5. James White, obviously Bogut was the first pick like 15 years ago at this point, and he won National Player of the Year, but Wiseman's far more talented than Bogut ever was. So,
yeah. And with the center position, they've won it with JaVale McGee and Jordan Bell starting. So, like,
that too,
the center position's the least important position, especially for the Golden State Warriors. But just having a excellent center, I think, does really a lot for the Warriors going forward.
Yeah, definitely. And now the Charlotte Hornets are now on the clock.
With the 3rd pick in the Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the Charlotte Hornets select Obi Toppin. I think this is a good pick for the Hornets. Obviously, with LaMelo Ball still on the clock, I think many people were thinking he would make a good fit, but I just don't think the Hornets are a good fit if LaMelo gets there. They already have Devontae Graham. They already have Terry Rozier. That's a pretty good backcourt. Maybe not one that's going to take them to an NBA title, but right now for the Hornets, they need to start addressing some major areas of concern, and I think on the wing is definitely one where they can improve. Obviously, they have PJ Washington right now. I think you can kind of slot Obi Toppin in next to Washington and next to Miles Bridges as well. I think that makes a really good starting 5, maybe a little bit undersized in the modern game, but I think that can kind of create some matchup issues to where it might create a slight advantage for the Charlotte Hornets having, kind of a switchable lineup per se. And while Toppin's maybe not an elite defender at rim protector or anything like that, I think he's maybe the most talented player at this position, and he can come in right away and I think make a really big difference for the Hornets as they kind of look to continue to develop and get back to the NBA playoffs after missing it the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, definitely. I think many people think LaMelo Ball will go here, but I definitely agree with you. Charlotte just doesn't seem like a good fit for him. Like, they have Terry Rozier as a very good player. They have Devontae Graham, who had an insanely good breakout season. His efficiency from shots that aren't 3, you'd like to see that improve, but he can knock down a lot of 3s, so that's good. PJ Washington, he's a future star. Miles Bridges is very good. They still have Malik Monk, who's still really young. He's obviously had his, off-the-court issues with his suspension relating to breaking the NBA drug policy, but hopefully all that's in the past and he can continue to develop and be a very talented player, because he was very fun to watch at his one season in Kentucky. But having a guy like Obi Toppin, he can really do it all. I've seen questions about Can his athleticism be the same at the next level? I think so. He's a very good athlete. I've seen questions saying, can he have the switchability on defense that he had at this level? I think he could defend 3 through 5 pretty easily at this level, too. I just think he's an incredible player, and there's questions about his age. I believe 22 years old. I've tweeted about this many times. Age, when you're looking at a prospect, should not be the number one thing you look at, because Brandon Clark was 23 at the time of the draft, I believe, and he's going to end up being one of the 3 or 4 best players in this class probably. So if you're looking for an 18-year-old who's not near as polished as Obi Toppin, I think you're doing your job wrong. That's what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, and not necessarily saying that Obi Toppin is going to be a player that, like, LaMelo Ball could have a better career, but I think Obi Toppin's fit on this Hornets team, I think fits in really well, playing alongside.
Much safer.
Yeah, it's a much safer pick. I think the Hornets, they know what they're going to get out of Obi Toppin. He's going to come in, he's going to have plenty of fun, which I think is another thing. Like, Obi Toppin, just when he plays basketball, looks like he's having fun. He looks like he wants to be there. And while not, I don't really have the same, character questions with LaMelo Ball as maybe some other prospects, I do feel kind of having someone that can kind of come in, want to bring like a fun, energetic attitude to the team. I think that's beneficial in the long run for a team looking to kind of develop and get into the postseason on a more regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. This is a very good pick here for the Hornets, and that's all I got on that one. And now with the 4th pick, the Chicago Bulls are now on the clock. With the 4th pick in the 2020 Making the Madness mock draft, the Chicago Bulls select LaMelo Ball from the Illawarra Hawks of the Australian NBL. LaMelo Ball, obviously, he's been in the spotlight since he was 14, 15 years old, being the brother of Lonzo Ball. But last season in Australia, he just wasn't that good. He had some eye-popping stats, I think 20 a game, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, very good. But he just is not a good shooter. And he's really skinny, which worries me defensively. Lonzo is known for his defense and passing ability. LaMelo is a great passer, but I just feel like the expectations are too high. I think he could be a good player, but I don't think he's going to be better than Anthony Edwards. And I wouldn't pick him here personally if I was doing it based off what I think the draft should be, but I think nobody's going to let him slip past 4. I don't think he has MVP potential. I think he could be good, but I'm just really worried about his shooting and defense at this level. This isn't high school anymore where he can take 50 shots a game and score 50 and pull up from the logo with a bunch of kids who aren't going to play past high school guarding him. This is the NBA, and he's really going to have to learn how to be more efficient.
Definitely. There are some concerns with LaMelo Ball, but the one thing I'll say with LaMelo, I think he can kind of develop I think the Bulls are the right fit for him, kind of if you're looking at teams in that top 4 to be a good fit for him. I think that's probably the location where I would really like to, go if I were LaMelo Ball of those top 4 teams in the draft. Maybe the Warriors would be a good fit as well, but looking at the Bulls, they've got Kobe White, who I think is better playing off the ball. Obviously, he's played point guard, but I think you can move Kobe White off the ball and play LaMelo on the ball. I think LaMelo, he's a really good passer. I think he can find Zach LaVine, Kobe White, Lauri Markkanen on the wing. And I think that kind of works in well with the Bulls. I'm not certain LaMelo is going to be, a high-level NBA player going forward and, be a superstar. But certainly I think he can come in. And if he can, the thing is with him, if he can show up, go out, play basketball, and just want to play the game, want to get better, want to, be dedicated to being a team-oriented player, I think LaMelo Ball's a home run pick. If he's, focused on himself way too much, focused on, being big baller brand and all that, I think that's where you get the issues. But certainly, I think this is a good pick, I think, for the Bulls going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have Chris Dunn too. You have Zach LaVine. I think they'll move on from Zach LaVine. He's stated that he's not happy the direction of the team. So I think that'll open up a spot where you can put Kobe White at the 2 possibly, and see how that works, and have LaMelo at the 1. Wendell Carter's very good. Lauri Markkanen, he kind of had a down season, but he's still talented. I think this is a perfect pick for the Bulls, and if anybody can develop him into being a star, I think it's them.
I agree on that part. Now time for the 5th pick. With the 5th pick in the Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers have selected Denny Adjia from Israel. I think this is an interesting pick for the Cavaliers. Obviously, they don't need point guard. I think that's where the draft is really its strongest, at the point position. But moving past here, I think Adjia, he kind of fits into them. He's a good playmaker for his size. He's a good ball handler. He can, I think, shoot pretty well. I've watched a couple of his highlights. He seems to be a really, good finisher around the basket. He can shoot. I think he's going to be, someone that can kind of come in and, play a role for this Cavaliers team as kind of a, he's listed at 6'9". I think he can play kind of that small ball 4 lineup. Obviously, I think the Cavaliers have major issues team-wise, and this isn't going to solve their, issues as a team. I think next year, if the Cavaliers have another down season and can get, a Jalen Green or someone like that, or a Cade Cunningham, if they win the lottery, get the first pick, get Cade Cunningham, that would be huge. But this is the kind of pick you pick up another kind of solid player, and then you're just waiting on getting that one star to come on the team, and then I think the Cavaliers can really kind of get back into the playoff contention and do that type of things. So Gia, I think he's a solid pick. He'll come into the Cavaliers. I think he'll be a starter day one and play for this Cavaliers team, and we'll see kind of what the franchise can do building going forward.
Yeah, definitely. Avija's a good pick. I believe that's how you say it. I probably said it wrong, but let's go with that. I think it's a very good pick. He's 6'9". I like him most. I think he profiles best as a wing, a 6'9" wing who can shoot. He can play solid defense. I like that a lot. Then you pair them with the really good guard duo of Darius Garland and Colin Sexton. That's your 1, 2, 3. And then you can't forget about Kevin Porter Jr., who at USC, he looked like he wasn't always engaged. He got suspended a couple times for violating team rules. He just didn't always look like he wanted to be there, which happens with another player in this draft that we'll talk about later that kind of plays the same position, who went to a Pac-12 school. But I think Porter Jr., as long as he stays engaged with the game and shows that he loves basketball, will continue to develop and be a really talented player, because his scoring is top notch. Dylan Windler, he's a very good young player too. And then you have Andre Drummond and Kevin Love. You can't forget about them. Those are 2 veterans who have been very good in the NBA for a long time. And you add Avdija to that mix. The Cavaliers are building something special after the disastrous season, which led to John Beilein only being the coach for 40 games.
Yeah, that not an ideal season for John Beilein, not an ideal season for the Cavaliers. On the college front, maybe we'll get John Beilein back in college basketball sometime soon. But just looking at the Cavaliers, I still think they're piece or 2 away from really taking that jump. I think with the Gia, they're still going to struggle a little bit next year, but the key for the Cavaliers is, I think, in 2 years, I think if they can get a really good player from this upcoming draft, one that profiles to be an absolutely loaded draft where there's talent up and down the board, I think that's a position where they can kind of start building. They get a good coach in as well to kind of mesh with the players, maybe hire Ty Lue back or something like that. I just think the Cavaliers, once they get the system kind of built up right, they'll be back in playoff contention sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely. And with the sixth pick, the Atlanta Hawks are now on the clock. With the sixth pick in the 2020 Making the Madness mock draft, the Atlanta Hawks select Isaac Okoro, wing from Auburn. Okoro, he really rose up the draft boards. I don't feel like many were talking about him preseason mock drafts, but he was very good this season, a great defender. And at the NBA level, where you see the scores every night, and it's clear that the offense isn't always the top thing for teams. Like 140 to 130 scores on a nightly basis aren't always great, but Okoro is a really good scorer too. He can really get to the hoop. He's very strong. His shooting's an issue, only 29% from deep, but I think he could develop a shot at some point. And then you're on an Atlanta Hawks team with a guy who's going to shoot a bunch of times like Trae Young. You'll make a good amount of them. Trae Young's a good player. I think he's a tad overrated, but he's a very good player. He's a franchise player. Then John Collins, who's a stretch five. That's exactly what you look for in today's game. I mean, he could even play the four, I guess, with Clint Capella on the team. And then you just have a lot of really talented players. Bruno Fernando was very good at Maryland. Kevin Herter, DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish. I mean, there's just so much there that this team has a lot of potential. I mean, Cam Reddish was very good down the stretch this season. DeAndre Hunter had a solid season. He didn't have an amazing season, but if you're going to get what DeAndre Hunter did this season, you're not going to complain. Cam Reddish is going to be a very good player. This Atlanta Hawks team looks to be very talented in the future, and adding a guy like Isaac Okoro along with the talented wings you already have with Hunter and Reddish, you can play them at the 2-3-4, and that's elite defense right there.
Yeah, and I think Okoro, his biggest attribute is defensively. I think with Trae Young, obviously he's not the greatest of defenders, but you look at Cam Reddish, you look at DeAndre Hunter. Those are two elite defenders. You add Okoro into that. Kevin Herter's okay defensively. If I think Clint Capella, he'll be there kind of for the long haul. And I think this team's going to improve a little bit more defensively, especially adding an Okoro into the rotation. I think he'll probably profile as the sixth man, but at the sixth pick in this draft, I mean, that's not really something that you don't necessarily want. I think they already have a good rotation going forward. Just to add Okoro into it, I think the Hawks are building something special, and while Okoro I don't think is going to be coming in day one and being a superstar player that's going to make the difference in the franchise, I think he's another really good young talented piece that can kind of maybe develop into a starter role. And that's what you need if you're the Atlanta Hawks and you're trying to get back into playoff contention, get back to where they were in 2015, where they were the one seed. Obviously, easier said than done, especially given the East is a little bit better than it was back in 2015. But the Hawks should be on the up, maybe make the playoffs this upcoming season. And we'll see about the Hawks going forward. But I think they're building something pretty well for the future.
Yeah, worst case scenario I see for Okoro, like 5 seasons in, let's say he doesn't really figure out his shooting ability. All right, that's fine. He's a guy who's going to play 30 minutes a game, score you 7 to 8 points at the very worst, and play elite defense. That's something that's of value at the sixth pick. Whether he becomes a great offensive player or not, his defense is always going to be sought after in the NBA, and he can carve out a good 12 to 15-year NBA career.
I agree with that. On to the Detroit Pistons at the 7th pick. With the 7th pick in the Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the Detroit Pistons select Onyeka Okongwu out of USC. I think for the Pistons, they kind of just need help really kind of at every position going forward. And Okongwu, I think, is a really good fit, especially at the center spot. And Okongwu, he's going to come in. I think he's going to fit in well. He can play both the 4 and the 5. He's really athletic. And he's going to be a really good piece going forward for this team. He'll play both the 4 and the 5. He's as mentioned, athletic. I think he needs to develop a 3-point jumper to be a four in the NBA. If he can develop that, he's a bit undersized. Looking at the just size and the skill set, his skill set profiles as a 5, the size profiles as a 4. But I think he can play the 5 at the next level. He can kind of match up, be faster than most big men. They're kind of big and slow. I think Okongwu's more athletic, fast, quicker. So I think that agileness is something that can certainly be used to his advantage. I think Okongwu is going to step in, be a solid player for this Pistons team going forward.
Yeah, definitely. Onyeka Okongwu had a very good season at USC. I mean, he was great. He was very good, but he made one 3-pointer all season, and it was like a 55-foot shot against Arizona. He got fouled too. They didn't call it, but he got like flipped in the air and made it from like 55 feet at the buzzer. I was watching that game, so that's why I know that. But the Pistons, you're right. They don't look good right now. Sekou Doumbouya, who they drafted last year, he looks like he could have a very bright future on that wing spot. He's a good talent, but he's super young. But you look at some guys like Derrick Rose. He's not in the future of that team. He's a fine player. Same with Blake Griffin. They're both solid players at this point. Griffin and Rose have both dealt with a fair share of injuries. They're just not future players for this team that's not looking that great at the moment. But Christian Wood had a really good breakout season, former UNLV player. Lewis King, I think he has very high potential to, at the very least, be a serviceable starter at the NBA level. I like his defense. I like his shooting ability. He was very good at Oregon after he came back from a foot injury early in the season in 2018-2019. He's a very good player. Svi Mikhailuk, he's a good shooter. He's a decent defender. Luke Kennard, he's a good shooter. And Jordan Bone, I mean, he's a very, very fast player who's a good distributor and was very good at Tennessee. Like, they have pieces. If they can develop them properly, they could be very good. But if not, they could be one of the worst teams in the NBA for the near future.
Yeah, and being looking at the Pistons, I still think I agree. Their trajectory is more so should be building towards the future. I think with Blake Griffin, he's kind of at the back end of his career. Derrick Rose was fun this year. He broke out and was kind of back to the old Derrick Rose, but he's not in the future of the Pistons. I think their best thing, the thing they probably need to do going forward is kind of just blow it up and rebuild and kind of start tanking more often than the draft lottery and getting higher picks and getting younger. And with Okongwu, he's kind of someone that can step in, and I like him at that center position. You can play him at the 4 with Christian Wood. And this Detroit Pistons team, I think, should get younger, should get more athletic, should focus on getting better. And if they have, maybe they, aren't that good next year, but they get a really talented high-level pick. Maybe they win the lottery, get Cade Cunningham. That's a position where I think the Pistons could very quickly vault into kind of the playoff team and the team everyone's looking out for of the future.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. And now with the 8th pick in the 2020 Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the New York Knicks select Tyrese Halliburton, point guard, Iowa State. Tyrese Halliburton, he's a very good player. He broke his hand after 22 games this season. He had a solid true freshman season, but he really broke out this season after Iowa State lost Talen Horton-Tucker and Mariel Shayok. Halliburton really went off, and he was the only really good player on that team. Rasir Bolton, he was okay. But you look at Halliburton, he had 15 a game. He shot 41% from deep. And I've heard questions about will he be a good shooter at the next level because he kind of has a weird jumper. I think it looks very good. I mean, some players just have weird jumpers, and that's how they learn how to shoot. I don't think it's a Lonzo Ball situation where his jumper's so slow that it really affects him. Halliburton just has a weird-looking form. I think he'll figure it out, and if he does have to change it, he will. But he shot 41% from deep this year, 43 the previous year, and he was an absolute star in college basketball, even though Iowa State was bad. He's a very solid defender, too. His weight could be a problem at the next level also, only 175, kind of like a LaMelo Ball situation. I'd like to see him bulk up a little bit, but I think he could be a very good defender. He's a good distributor. He had 15, 5.9, and 6.5. That's about as good as you can ask for, and he was great this season. You put him on a Knicks team that, unfortunately for Knicks fans, seemed to never do well in the lottery. They wanted the first pick last year. They did not get that, and they could have gotten the second pick and gotten Ja Morant. Instead, they got the third pick. R.J. Barrett's a good consolation prize. Barrett's a very good player, and he's going to be good for the near future. Mitchell Robinson could be a potential star one day, but Kevin Knox looks like he's knocking on the doorstep of being a bust. He just doesn't have the athleticism for this level, which is unfortunate because I thought he was going to be pretty good, but doesn't seem like it. Kind of same deal with Dennis Smith Jr. Just hasn't progressed the way that people thought when he got drafted by the Mavericks. Frank Ntilikina, kind of the same deal. They have a lot of guys that, could be good, but just haven't. And I just think that R.J. Barrett and Mitchell Robinson are really the centerpieces on this team, and you just build around them, add Halliburton with that, and you have a true ball handler who's a very good talent, and the Knicks could be starting to build something.
Yeah, you know who the Knicks could really use right about now that they had a chance to draft?
Oh, in this draft?
Michael Porter Jr.
Oh, right, yeah. Kevin Knox was drafted over, and that's a tough look.
That's a super tough scene. I think I like this pick. I think R.J. Barrett, they've kind of discussed maybe he wants to play the point guard. Maybe they want to put Tyrese Halliburton at the point guard. Either one can play point guard, I feel, on this team. And with the Knicks, having 2 point guards is sometimes better than having none.
No point.
Which is unlike college football, where if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 0 quarterbacks. You have 2 point guards, you have 2 point guards. So that's good. I think Halliburton will come in. He'll be a solid starter from day one. Do I think he's, a franchise changer? Maybe not, but I think he can come in. He's going to play his role. He's going to, distribute the ball. He's a really good passer, has, high level IQ, high, level vision. He finds players that they don't even know they're open, then they're open for a 3. He has that type of passing ability. I think R.J. Barrett kind of has a good passing ability. We'll see about the jumper. It looks weird, but if it continues to go in at the next level, then if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If he's making shots,
there you go.
Don't break it. And I think Halliburton, he's going to come in. He's going to, be a really solid player in the Knicks. They'll like this pick going forward, even if it isn't going to help them necessarily even next year.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
Now time for the 9th pick. With the 9th pick in the Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the Washington Wizards select Devin Vassell. I really like Vassell. Obviously, I would have probably, if it was just me doing a mock draft, put him earlier, but cannot do that. So I'm going to go to a reasonable place, which is the Washington Wizards. I think they need kind of a Vassell piece. He's 6'7", he's long, he can defend at a high level. The Wizards, they have John Wall, they have Bradley Beal going into next year, but they really need help at that 3 spot. Troy Brown isn't cutting it. Rui Hachimura's more of a 4. I think Thomas Bryant's a solid 5, but just adding Vassell
Brown will be good.
Yeah, I think Brown might be more of a 6-man. I think Vassell comes in. He'll start day one. He's an elite 3-and-D wing, can shoot the ball at an elite level, has a really good stroke. It goes in all the time. I think he'll translate to the NBA level, being that perfect 3-and-D wing, and that's what the Wizards need if they're going to consider trying to get back in the NBA playoffs next season.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan of Vassell, not as I mean, you might be the biggest Devin Vassell fan in existence, but I think that the Wizards get a very talented 3-and-D wing here. Is he going to be Paul George? Like, maybe not, but I kind of like that as a comp almost. Just the ability I feel like is there. I think at best case he's Paul George, and at worst case he's a serviceable NBA starting wing. He's a very good shooter. He's a great defender. Add that along with the elite guard play of John Wall and Bradley Beal, and then Jerome Robinson, who was a lottery pick 2 seasons, 3 years ago, I guess at this point, I believe, by the Clippers, was traded to them. He showed flashes in the bubble. If he can be something, that'd be pretty good. Mo Wagner, former first-round pick by the Lakers, he's, been okay. His career highlight might be getting headbutted by Giannis, but Mo Wagner I feel like he can at the very least be a solid bench player. And then Rui Hachimura obviously is going to be a star in the NBA. Big fan of Rui. I like everything he does. He's going to be great. And the Wizards look to be, building back to being in the playoffs. Hopefully John Wall and Bradley Beal are healthy. And the future is kind of looking bright for them.
Yeah. And I'm not sure the Wizards are anywhere, at the moment, unless Vassell is Paul George. I'm not sure they're anywhere necessarily near a title contention, at least anytime soon. But if they can, keep Bradley Beal around, Rui Hachimura develops, Devin Vassell develops, I think this is a team that maybe 3 to 4 years down the line could be competing for, an Eastern Conference Finals appearance or an NBA Finals appearance or something like that a few years down the line. And definitely I like this pick. Devin Vassell, good pick for the Wizards onto the Phoenix Suns.
With in the NBA Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the Phoenix Suns select Precious Achiuwa, forward out of Memphis. Precious Achiuwa, he did very good for his he was good, great period. But with his circumstances, he kind of had a lot on his plate. He went to play with James Wiseman. Wiseman helped get him there. He doesn't go to Memphis without Wiseman, probably. He wanted to play with James Wiseman. He didn't want to play on Memphis without James Wiseman, which is what ended up happening. So he was just put in a tough spot. He was an All-American, not All-American, the conference is the American, but he's an All-AAC player. So that's very good. That was a weird little thing that just happened there. But I like him a lot as a player. He's a great athlete. He's a great defender. His shooting isn't there yet, only 32%, but he's very good down low, and he's just really talented athlete. I think putting him on a team with Devin Booker, he obviously is outstanding. Then Javon Carter, one of my favorite college players of all time, really showed out in the bubble. He was the 32nd overall pick a few years ago, I believe. I think he could be an NBA starter at some point. I believe Ricky Rubio is still under contract next season. So you have that. You have Mikal Bridges. You have DeAndre Ayton, who are both very good players. Ty Jerome, we'll see what he ends up being in the NBA, but he's a very smart player. Cam Johnson looked to be a future, star possibly. That elite shooting ability definitely translated, and he's a solid enough defender. Kelly Oubre Jr. is also a very good player. He's hurt for a lot of the season. And then you have Frank Kaminsky, former National Player of the Year at Wisconsin. He's a fine player. He never really panned out, but having him off the bench is fine. This Phoenix Suns team was a Portland Trailblazers loss away from making the playoffs. And I think next season they'll be a top 5 seed in the West.
Yeah, I think the Suns definitely on the up. And I don't even think Precious Achiuwa really needs to come in and do anything outstanding to really help this team going forward. He can kind of just come in, play a role. I think he's going to probably play the 4 and the 5. I think he'll play the 4 when obviously playing next to DeAndre Ayton. I don't know if he starts, but you have him playing the 4 next to Ayton in lineups where he's in, and then when Ayton goes out, he can kind of switch, play the 5, which you saw a lot late in the season with Memphis. He's kind of a good scorer. He can get the rebound. He can get rebounds at a high level. He plays with a lot of energy. He's really active on the glass, and that's something you need. You need high energy guys. You need guys. I think Achiuwa has a really good personality that kind of fits with this, Suns team. I think he can come in. I don't know if he'll be a superstar ever in the NBA, but he comes in, plays his role, and the Phoenix Suns already have a really good inside-out combination with Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. They have the elite shooting on the wing, Cam Johnson, Kelly Oubre, Mikal Bridges. I think this Phoenix team is set up for the long haul to do really well, and just adding this pick is going to help it.
Yeah, for sure. And now with the 11th pick, the San Antonio Spurs are now on the clock.
With the 11th pick in the Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Saddiq Bey. I think that this is a typical Spurs pick. They like to pick the player that comes in, doesn't really have a lot of question marks. And I think Saddiq Bey is kind of that type of player. He'll play kind of the 3, the 4 at the next level. He's a good shooter. He can play on the wing. I think he plays well next to DeRozan. Kind of at that, can play at the 4 and have kind of DeRozan, I guess, at the 3 with the Derek White, Bryn Forbes kind of backcourt. I really kind of like that lineup versatility as well, where they can kind of go small. They can also go big, kind of have DeRozan at the 2, maybe Saddiq Bey at the 3. He can shoot it at a really good level. He's a good shooter, a good stroke. I just think this is a smart pick for the Spurs. Bey's also a good defender. I just really like Saddiq Bey. I think he's a solid pick for the San Antonio Spurs.
I agree. I mean, Saddiq Bey, he shot 45% from 3, I believe, at Nova this season. He really took a huge step up. There's questions about how his athleticism will translate and how that'll affect him defensively, and that's fair. I don't think he'll be an elite defender at the next level. I think he'll be serviceable, though he won't be a liability. I think that, but he's not really going to play the wing, I don't think. I think, because Keldon Johnson looks to be a future star. I don't know how he fell so late in the draft, because I would have picked him in the lottery, maybe top 10. He looked incredible in the bubble once he got playing time. I mean, he is a future NBA All-Star, and that's your prototypical wing. You can play Saddiq Bey at the 4, and I think you can get away with it. He might get burnt a little bit, but if he adds a little bit of strength, I think the 4 is an ideal spot for him. Obviously, you have LaMarcus Aldridge, but he's going to be like 36 soon. He's kind of old, so that's not great. But DeMar DeRozan, he's an old-school player. Like, he doesn't really shoot threes. He tries to hunt down mid-range shots, which seems to be kind of a dead thing in today's game. This is an aging team in a sense, but they're getting younger once Aldridge and Rudy Gay are out. Lonnie Walker could be a very good player in the future. Derek White, although he's kind of older, he spent 4 years at Colorado. He's 26 now, but he's a very solid player. Lucas Samanic, who they drafted, or Samanich maybe, who they drafted in the first round last year. He didn't play a whole lot this year, but he could be good in the future. Drew Eubanks, I don't think he's going to be a star or anything at any point, but I think he could be a serviceable NBA starter. He has nice feel for the game, a nice touch at the rim. And Shemezi Metu, who was very good at USC, I think could also be a serviceable NBA player at some point in the near future. And Trey Lyles is still only 24 years old. There's a lot of players who could develop into being something here, but Keldon Johnson, especially being a future star, Saddiq Bey is going to complement him really well, and I think this team, should be back in the playoffs very soon.
Yeah, I think definitely them in the playoffs. I think Aldridge at some point is going to be moved on, and then they'll kind of see, is it Jakob Poeltl who they end up going to? Maybe it's Jakob Poeltl, maybe it's someone else like a Chimezi Metu. I think this Spurs team going to try to get a little bit younger. They'll go out with, DeJounte Murray. They'll put Derek White, Bryn Forbes in the lineup. I think Keldon Johnson, you mentioned he could take a real step forward. They'll find some way to kind of mix and match those players. And then obviously having DeRozan, you kind of got to keep him around. He's a really good player, really good just scorer. He'll be, a solid player going forward. And then just having Bey, I think he can play the 4, small ball 4, which is something that's, really useful in the NBA. The NBA is going all small. If they can figure out the 5 spot as well, maybe they pick up or sign a really good free agent. maybe that's the position where the Spurs are back in contention, maybe for an NBA title at some point or down the line. But this, I think, the Spurs team, obviously they didn't want to be picking in the lottery. They never wanted to pick in the lottery, but while they're here, they may as well, get a solid piece, just like Sadiq Bey, I think, is.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of a team that'll never contend for a title, with the 12th pick, the Sacramento Kings are now on the clock. With the 12th pick in the 2020 Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the team who disappoints me the most every season as a fan, the Sacramento Kings select Aaron Nesmith, wing from Vanderbilt. I'm sure the Kings will find a way to mess this up like most things, because they just are a poorly run franchise. So good thing Vlade Divac and he stepped down. That's positive. Luke Walton's a very bad head coach. But moving on from that, De'Aaron Fox is a very good player. He's going to continue to be a star. But adding Aaron Nesmith, he's a guy who had 23 a game this season. He only played 14 games, but he shot 52% from three on 8 attempts per game. That's an absurd number. I just think he's a very good player. His defense isn't there yet, but I think he could develop defensively. I like his, intangibles to be a good defender one day, but his offense is next level. I mean, he's a better offensive player than Vassell. He's probably the best offensive-minded wing in this draft. And adding him on a team that already is bad defensively, just add more to the pot of not being good on defense. Buddy Hield, Luke Walton ruined him. So they'll probably trade him, but if not, he's also a bad defender, but he's a very good scorer too. And then you have Richaun Holmes, he's a solid player, but the Kings are a very bad team and will probably continue to be very bad for a long time.
Hey, they have some room for optimism. De'Aaron Fox, now they've got Buddy Hield. Obviously, when you pick up Aaron Nesmith,
head coach of every team.
All they need to do, they fire Luke Walton. They rehire. Who was their previous head coach the year before?
David Yeager.
Yeah, David. They were actually good with David Yeager. That's who their coach was. So they were actually pretty decent. De'Aaron Fox, I think, is he's extremely fast. He's good, solid defender. This team, they start playing up and down. They shoot a little bit more threes. They actually, try to play into their skill set as opposed to just not doing that. I think this is a Kings team that one day can make the NBA playoffs. And I think adding a player like Aaron Nesmith, he's an elite shooter. We'll see where this goes, but the Sacramento Kings, I don't think get worse by this pick.
No, they don't get worse, but anytime you have Luke Walton as your head coach, it's a complete disaster. And just, Jabari Parker's on the team. That would have been, awesome, 6 years ago when he was the number 1 recruit or number 2 recruit in his draft class and a top pick. That'd have been cool. He's kind of terrible. But, the Kings like bad players. So hopefully Aaron Nesmith is not that. I don't think he'll be that. But they'll probably end up drafting some overseas guy who was, a projected 60th overall pick that nobody's heard of.
Yeah, but then they'll pass on the reigning EuroLeague MVP who everyone's you should definitely draft.
Luke Walton ruined Marvin Bagley too. Marvin Bagley should be playing the 5, strictly the 5. He shouldn't be on the perimeter at all. I don't know why that's a thing. Marvin Bagley is a 5. Play him at the 5, and he'll be very good as long as he can stay healthy. But obviously Luke Walton hates winning. So
Luke Walton hates winning.
Yep.
As for the Pelicans, they didn't win in the NBA bubble. They kind of stunk it up, missed the playoffs. The whole reason they added more teams was just to get the Pelicans in the playoffs, and they failed. They failed miserably, but they are up. And with the 13th pick in the Making the Madness NBA mock draft, the Pelicans select Killian Hayes. Obviously, with Drew Holiday, there's some concern that he'll be shipped out of town soon. I think Lonzo Ball, you don't really know what to get out of him. So getting a guy like Hayes who kind of falls down to this position in the NBA, mock draft, I think is something that's going to be beneficial. If Hayes is able to fall this far, I think they definitely got to pick him. He has elite court vision. He's, a long, athletic, guard that can kind of come in. He's good with the ball in his hands. He has a smooth jumper. He's someone that can come in, I think, make a major impact right away for the New Orleans Pelicans. Maybe, defensively, the Pelicans still will not guard a single thing. Maybe Killian Hayes can actually play a little bit more defense than what the past team in the NBA bubble did. But I think the Pelicans, they'll eventually, I think they're on the way up. Obviously, you need Zion Williamson to play more than 10 minutes a game to be good, but Pelicans, they're on the way up. They've got Brandon Ingram. They've got Zion Williamson. Now they have Killian Hayes. This Pelicans team could be good in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a good pick. I don't think Killian Hayes is going to step in and be great right away. I could see him spending most of the year in the G League. I think he's more of a developmental. He has a very nice jumper, but it just didn't go in a lot. I think he's a very good, floor general, a very good true point guard. But I think maybe just having him sit here, on the bench, not playing a ton, or have him in the G League. There's not a better person in the league to learn from than Jrue Holiday. I mean, Jrue Holiday's been a very good player for a long time. He's still a very good defender. He's a good scorer. Lonzo Ball, he's there. As the great Charles Barkley said a couple of years ago, Lonzo Ball had like 2 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists in a game, and he said Lonzo Ball had a triple single. So he has a lot of triple singles. He's not a great player. He's a good defender. He's really streaky scoring. He's a good passer, but he's not a star like many thought he would be. I heard Jason Kidd a lot of comparisons. That didn't happen. He's not going to be that. Lonzo Ball is a fine player, though. He's a good bench piece in the future, I would say, more than being a starter. Brandon Ingram's a very good scorer. Obviously, Zion, Alvin Gentry got fired for not playing him enough. Zion's going to be very good. He's just something we've never seen before. He's just different. Like, his size and speed it doesn't make sense. He was, created out of a lab or something. Like, that couldn't have been a human that was formed on this planet because it just doesn't make sense. Like, I'm not very good at math, but it just doesn't add up. So, yeah, I just think that the Pelicans did a good job here. Josh Hart's going to be a good player off the bench. The Pelicans, maybe they can snag a 7 or an 8 seed, but I don't think Killian Hayes will be an immediate part of that.
Yeah. I think Hayes kind of comes in. I think he'll start the next season being kind of a bench player, but if he can kind of develop, get acclimated with the system, I think he's going to be a solid piece for the Pelicans and one that they can kind of build in the future once Jrue Holiday is kind of out of the picture for the Pelicans. I think Hayes is someone that could come in and run the point guard for this Pelicans team. And defensively, let's see if they can get better maybe with Hayes in the lineup. But for now,
for sure.
On to the 14th and final lottery pick for this year's NBA mock draft.
Yep. With the 14th pick in the 2020 Making the Madness mock draft, just kidding, they traded the pick for nothing. The Boston Celtics select Patrick Williams, forward from Florida State. Patrick Williams was good last season at Florida State. He didn't have a great season, but you're buying his upside. He is an unreal athlete. He can jump out of the gym. He's a very solid defender, and he has a solid jumper, even though it just didn't go down a ton. I think teams will buy into him at least shooting 30, or maybe, shooting 33, 34% from deep eventually. But I think he's a guy who could step in, play 15 minutes a game, and provide something defensively. Grant Williams, who they drafted in the first round last year, I don't think he's going to be very good. He just doesn't seem like much of an NBA player to me. I don't know how he went in the first round, but I liked him in college. Kemba Walker, very good player. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum looks like a future star. Then you have Romeo Langford, who's a very crafty scorer. Just if he needs to stay healthy. Carson Edwards could be a solid scorer at some point. Semi Ojeleye, I think he's still on the team. Maybe not. But Semi Ojeleye is cool. But Taco Fall, he's really tall. I like Taco Fall. He's probably not going to be anything crazy. Tremont Waters, he's not too bad. He could be a nice bench piece in the future. But, the Boston Celtics, they're going to sweep the Sixers because the Sixers are terrible every year. And they'll add a very good player in Patrick Williams onto that. They're a team that can afford to buy into the upside of a player because they're not really drafting for anything immediately because they're already a really good team.
Yeah, and I think Williams kind of steps in. I think in some spurts, I think he can come in and play the 5 for this team. Obviously, the 5 is the main concern. They have the Time Lord, Robert Williams, who's currently the 5. I guess with Daniel Theis, those are the 2 people currently playing the 5, with some exceptions, like Grant Williams occasionally comes in, plays the 5. With Williams, he's long, he's athletic. He can kind of come in and be, I think, a small ball 5 type player from day one. And I think he can defend at a high level. Obviously, I think in the modern game, he kind of fits more as a 4. He can kind of space the floor. But in a 5-out lineup with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, or Marcus Smart, one of those 2, I think the Celtics can be really good going forward, and Patrick Williams can fit into that mix for some, minutes, maybe at the 5, maybe at the 4. However it be, he's going to be on the court and being a pretty good player for this team.
Definitely. Some final words for me here on this part 1 here. Thanks for checking part 1 out. Part 2 will be next. We'll do the rest of the picks there. You can follow Jonathon on Twitter at Bracketologist3 and follow me on Twitter at Sean02MTM. And, we'll have more videos in the future working on a How Gonzaga Became a Blue Blood video. Hopefully that's up soon. I'm still working it out. Want it to sound great so you guys can enjoy it. So hopefully that goes well in the near future. But stay tuned, subscribe, like, and any last words for you?
You covered all the bases, but stay tuned, though, because next we do have picks 15 through 30.